Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about matching your knowledge of the rule system with your player's character's knowledge of adventuring, and how the less knowledge you have of system mastery, the better you can match your player experience to your player character experience, and the better you can bring your player character to life. This is an incredibly non-intuitive theory brought forward by Ingrid Bernhal. Ingrid Bernhal, he also goes by the pseudonym Hankern Farinale. He is the creator of Runehammer Games. He is the creator of Index Card RPG. Brilliant, brilliant creator. He wrote Viking Death Squad. He wrote Bearcat. He wrote Junked. He's written a lot of really strong indie tabletop role-playing games. And he put forward in a video recently that your optimum game, this is really out there. But I think he's onto a point. Now I want to say, before we get, this is terrible news for me, right? Because I'm saying Dungeons & Dragons should always be your primary game, always be your 51% game, right? And this is evidence against what I say, right? So why am I talking about it today? Well, this guy's brilliant, so I don't ignore anything he says. Two, you need to deal with, data that goes against what you're saying and process it. And then if that's right, you need to change what you're saying, right? Now, so let's get into his theory, okay? So what he's saying is, that every time, that if you want to be a peak tabletop role-playing gamer, right, to play peak tabletop role-playing games, if you want to, and this is specifically on the player side, which even that is interesting because so little advice is really given new to players, or to players at all, because people are like, well, the DMs are really what matters. So here's what he's saying. He's saying that if you want to role play really well, if you want to be the best tabletop role playing game player you can be, you should switch your game system every time you make a new player character. Okay? And he's saying he understands that you're not going to be able to meet that, but that would be the optimum. And if you did that, you would be playing your best player character every time. Now, why? Why would switching the tabletop role-playing game system produce this, right? So let me just explain what he's saying. You would play Lord of the Rings, Cubicle 7's Lord of the Rings, right? The One Ring. And then you would play D&D 5e. And next you would play D20 Mutants and Masterminds. And next you would play Jaroon. And next you would play Feng Shui. And next you would play Decipher's Star Trek. Right? And next you would play The Watch. Right? And you would just jump from system to system to system, right? And you're like, wait a second, how am I ever going to get system mastery? How am I ever going to learn the super cool builds, right? And what he's saying is that when you start an adventure, with very few exceptions, the vast majority of the time, you start your adventure between first level and fourth level, right? Now that'll change in different systems. They'll have different words for it, but it's pretty much the same. You're gonna transition into this, right? Very, very interesting. Now, what he's saying is that if you do this, if you switch your system mastery, you don't know what you're doing in the game, right? And you're learning it on the fly as you play, right? Which matches your adventure. Your adventure is new to adventuring, right? They're not 10th, 15th, 20th level. They're new, right? And they're scrabbling to stay alive, and they're scrabbling to survive, and they're scrabbling to excel, and they're learning about the monsters for the first time, and they're learning how to deal with villagers for the first time, and they're learning how to be a folk hero for the first time, right? And if you are matching your player character experience with your player experience, and struggling to understand the dice, how the dice work, and struggling to understand, how not just the dice, but also how is equipment used in this game? How does lighting work in this game? How does does this have the same pillars as D&D did? Does it run on combat, interaction, and exploration, or are there completely different pillars? Right? What is the game? What is the game design trying to lead you toward? You play a Luke Crane game, it's going to be very different than a Gary Gygax game, right? Be very different from a Robin D. Law's game. It's going to be very different from anything that Modiphius would put out, like the 2D20 Conan system. Very different, right? And so basically, what he's saying is that you are matching the experience of your player character with your experience as a player, and if it's new, right, then that produces the best symbiotic connection between player experience and player character experience, and you're going to be giving this very raw and genuine play to your player character, right? Absolutely a brilliant concept, right? I've certainly not tried this. I think very few people have tried this, right? And the reason why he's saying this is he's building a brand new tabletop role-playing game called Hardsuit, and he's seeing people, bringing forward really strong, powerful, unbound play, right? Like, not bound by tradition, not bound by expectation, not bound by perfect build, not bound by foreknowledge of the system, the limitations of the system, the limitations of the player characters, what to expect from a dungeon master. All of this, it's new and it's fresh and it's unique, and it's bringing forth this very raw player character portrayal, right? Absolutely brilliant concept. I love this idea. I really think there's something here. It is challenging, and I will tell you right now, we have to be careful when we take advice from a guy like Ingrid Bernhal, and here's why. There are John Harper is another guy I think that is exactly like this. Blades in the Dark, right? And Ingrid. So John Harper and Ingrid Bernhal, same. Okay, and the reason why is they build these games, and when they bring players to their table, they're literally world-class players, right? Like you're getting, they can choose who they want to play with. Everybody at their table is almost certainly been a DM for a decade or more. Everybody at their table is almost certainly a brilliant, very creative person. And so you get these games that are designed to play with absolute rock star players around the entire table. And that's one of the strengths of Dungeons & Dragons, is Dungeons & Dragons will play with bog standard. Dungeons & Dragons can give you a good time with a bad DM and 4 bog standard players who are really not that creative, not that intelligent, and not that exciting as as players. So it's kind of a lot. And this is completely different than that. This is just looking at tabletop role-playing game at a completely different level than anything we've really seen before. I think there's something really raw, and I think this idea has a very good foundation. Now, the other thing, though, is it's going to be incredibly difficult to find players who are willing to do this, right? Because right now, this is so opposite of everything that's happening in the market. This is 100% opposite of every single thing that's happening in the market. What's happening right now is every single indie, virtually every single indie on the planet, is figuring out how to convert their stuff to 5e, because they're realizing that players do not want to change systems. They want to play lots of different worlds and not change systems. And players are saying, hey, you remember how you told me 5e isn't the best thing, it isn't the best system to play this in? You can go kick rocks. I want 5e. Give it to me now. Let's do this. So this is really the opposite of what's being said in the market, but it is a brilliant, fascinating idea. I don't think he's wrong. I don't think he's wrong at all. I think the only problems with this theory are, where are you going to find 4 or 5 brilliant players, courageous players, endurance players who are willing to do this, right? And frankly, I think the vast amount of dungeon masters could never do this. Dungeon masters and game masters could never do this, right? Now, Ingrid Bernhal's in a situation where he can. I think John Harper would be in a situation where he could. Luke Crane, before all that stuff happened, he probably could have. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's tough. But I think this is a really, really brilliant idea, and I think it's interesting to see where he's going with this idea. How can we take this and immediately convert it for 5e play if we're not willing to go as far as what he's talking about? Well, the first thing you could do is never play the same type, never ever play the same mix ever, right? And I'm guilty of this. I've been playing Turtles for a while now, man. I just keep rolling them. Oh, actually, you know what? I'm sorry. I actually did switch my race recently. So in one of my games, I'm running a Harangon. So you can change your race, class, and background, and promise to never run the same, right? Also, abandon internet builds. That's for the weakest, most boring player types, right? So abandon internet builds in D&D 5e, and don't ever play the same race, class, background, composition. Switch it every time. And that gets you closer to this, maybe even close to it, right? And the other thing is switch your settings. Like, ask your DM, if you guys ran in Eberron, say, hey, I'd really love it if Wild Beyond the Witchlight world was used for this next one. And then Strixhaven. And then Ravnica, you know what I mean? And keep it moving. All that's my opinion. What do you think of Ingrid Bernhal's idea? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.